Hello teachers, my name is Steve from McGraw-Hill Education, and this is one of a series of videos designed to help teachers in this time of extended absence from classroom interact with students digitally so that they can maintain an education and have access to the content from their California Impact series. First of all, this is a video designed for the grades 6 through 12th grade teacher for any of the titles in the California Impact series. As you can see, I am in a 10th grade world history class, but everything that we're saying here today is appropriate for grades 6 through 12 titles because they all work exactly the same way on the website. So what we're going to look at today is resources available to you both in an embedded form and a library access form, and how to use those resources either within our platform or push them over to a Google Classroom or other type sharing environment. So let's start with that help site. And that help site, which we heartily recommend, can be found by going over here, follow my cursor with your eyes in the upper right-hand corner, click on or mouse over on that, and you'll see the section option in is that help site. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And as it loads, what you'll see here is a help site that is very comprehensive, and it's designed to help you as a teacher to navigate the website. This website is not about teaching at all. It's not about history, social science at all. It is all about navigating this website and accomplishing tasks on this website. So if you need a refresher course on that, I heartily encourage you to take a look at that and deal with that. So I'm going to go ahead and close that window, and that will take us back to our dashboard. So first, let's take a look at resources as they are embedded within the content. And by that, I mean resources that are attached to chapters and therefore attached to lessons. So my favorite way of getting into the course is to go directly into the Browse Your Course. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select a chapter. How about Chapter 4 of the French Revolution? Clicking on that will take me to the chapter level set of resources. So let's let those load. And you'll see here I'm in Chapter 4. It tells me that across the upper left. And I again can see that I am in chapter level resources. The word chapter is all over there on the tiles. So the first resource I wanted to make brief mention of is the presentation and the edit button right next to it. Just know that as you as a teacher edit the presentation and add or remove or rearrange any of the resources in that presentation, that is immediately apparent to the students when they log in. They see exactly what you have left for them. You have, of course, have the edit button, which is how you accomplish all of those additional tasks. So you'll see that in this case, there are a number of resources already loaded, and they are there. Grayed out are resources that are not part of the presentation. If I wish to include one, I'll wait till this loads. I can click on that, and so then that would be part of the presentation. Removing it takes it away from the presentation, and I can rearrange things as well. So that would be the edit function. And again, as you are editing the presentation, then it is being made available for the students at the same time. So that's the first thing. Now let's talk about making any resource available to a student within their account. So I'm going to go into the Chapter Activities, Projects, and Worksheets section first. As you probably remember, you click on this to open up that blade, and you see a number of resources here, quite a few resources. By point of order, many of these are in either PDF or DOC format. Those would be wholly appropriate for you to take, and if you wished, you could take those and transport them over to say a Google Drive or some other student interface kind of environment. But what if I want to make those accessible to my student here in a California Impact environment? Let's take a look at this entry test as an example. Two things to note. One are the two checkboxes, add to student page and include in presentation. So I can accomplish either of those tasks at this point by simply checking off the checkbox. Clicking here, adding to the student page, it now occurs on my student page. And later on in the video, I'll show you how to double check that. Or I could include it into the presentation as the presentation that we just looked at a moment ago. So that adds it into that bar for me to move around. Conversely, obviously, Unchecking those boxes remove things. So in this way, teachers, you can very much limit the resources that your students are seeing on any given time. And that can be very helpful for teachers. So while we're in here, let me point out some of the resources that are available. We just looked at the entry test. So here's some background and knowledge activities for you to take a look at. To support inquiry-based learning, if you wanted to push out some of those, they are here. And currently, in my account, those are all defaulted to off, so they would not be part of the student account. Now, again, notice these are in PDFs, so I could open that up. In fact, I'll do that for you. Evaluate that, take a look at it and say, okay, that looks like something I may want to do. And then perhaps if I wanted to, I could then send it over to my Google Drive. Underneath that are some project-based learning opportunities that I wanted to point out. Project-based, especially the one over here in the right-hand corner with EdTech Teacher. This is one that typically gets overlooked because you will not find this referenced in your print teacher's edition very often. And you will see that it is an online resource only, so that could be very appropriate in this situation that we find ourselves in. Underneath that are a wealth of worksheet type activities if you're looking for those kinds of things to push out to your students. We've got vocabulary activities here, student simulation activities here, differentiated resources such as guiding reading activities here. Notice that all of these are not by default added to the student page. For some ELD materials here, etc. And then there's some Spanish resources and review materials here. Under the Spanish resources, I did want to point out to you that many of these documents are available here in Spanish as well. So let's move from this, which was the chapter level, and I'm going to scroll back up to the top. And now we're going to drill down a little bit into the lesson level. And to do that, I come over here to this pull-down menu, and within Chapter 4, we'll go directly to Lesson 1. We'll give that a moment to load. Now, one would think that the chapter level resources and the lesson level resources would be identical or perhaps have a tremendous amount of overlay. And they do have some overlay, but there certainly are some things at the lesson level that cannot be found at the chapter level and vice versa. So let's take a focus on one of those. So specifically within the lesson, I wanted to focus on things like the student edition. So if I open this up, this is perhaps one of the things you may want to take a look at and interact with your students in this way. So we have two different versions of the student book. There's the print student book, which would look and feel much like the student textbook in a PDF type format, but does not contain much in the way of interactivity. It's just an electronic version of the book, as opposed to the interactive student ebook. This is the book, but it is organized much more like a web page, but it does contain some very strong interactive features, such as the ability to annotate the text and make highlights in the text, and perhaps with things like maps that can be animated within the text. So you may wish to take a look at those and see if those are appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish. Further down a little bit, this is an interactive version of the inquiry journal that you may wish to use. The interactive in that the student could respond to the questions onto the text itself right there. So that could be something you're interested in. One of the more useful things during this time of digital instruction could become the Learn Smart adaptive learning environment. So I'm going to go ahead and open that at this point and just take a look at that. So what this is, as a reminder, is a digitized version of the student textbook with the main ideas of the chapter highlighted in yellow. So let's let that load up. And this is something that the student could access on their own or you could assign. So there's a self-study environment here. So here I am, I'm in lesson 1, the French Revolution begins, and you can see over here, let me reduce the size of the page, that this is, for all intent and purpose, the student text. And what happens here is I can navigate over on the left-hand side and go into various pages of the text. And here's a perfect example of what I was speaking about. So this is page 133 of the text, And it's communicating to me as a student that this section here, highlighted in yellow, is the most important part of this text that I should be concentrating on. So then I would take a look at this and I could read the text here, or if I'm lucky enough to have my book at home, I could read that out of my book there, or I could go back to that print version of my student book and read it there. However you wish your students to do that. But the idea is once the student takes a look at the text and feels that they are ready to measure themselves against a set of questions to see how well they are remembering the content, then they come down to the bottom left-hand corner, click on Practice, and the software will ask them questions and their level of comfort within those questions. So here, identifying the underlying causes of the French Revolution, check all that apply. I'm going to select Enlightenment ideas and religious reforms and how confident do I feel. I think that's the right answer. And it turns out that I got one right and a couple of them wrong. So it communicates to me what I did correctly and what I did incorrectly. Time to move on to the next one. Before the Revolution, French society was divided into 3 classes. These classes were known as, how about electors? And I'm pretty much unsure about this one, so let's click on that. And it turns out, yes, I was incorrect. So how about this one? The Tala was an, and I have no idea. I don't remember reading about this. Maybe it wasn't as prepared as I thought, and I can come over here. This might be a little bit hard to read, but it says read about this. So I click on that, and it will take me directly back to the book at that specific point of the text where that question was derived from. So it became very helpful student-studied guide, especially in this time of distance learning. So I'm going to click out of that. So that was the Learn Smart piece. Other pieces that can be found here at the lesson level. I'm going to go down here into the interactive student resources. And these are all assignable resources. You'll notice that this one with the red bar, that designates that I have assigned to this. And this is one of the ones that I wanted to remind teachers about. These are sections within a lesson. These would be those highlighted points in the text that you would see in bold. This is the causes of the French Revolution, National Assembly, end of the old regime. But what this allows you as a teacher to do is I could open up this one here on the National Assembly. And then as I wait for this to load, and you'll see it appears again in the form of a web page, and then follow my cursor with your eyes in the upper right-hand corner and click on this icon, and I can take the reading level and drop it down to an approaching level for students who struggle to read this very dense text at grade level. So I've just made this a little bit more accessible for many students who struggle to read at grade level. Then I could go ahead, close that out, and push that out to my students. So that could be another possible task that you are assigning students. So that's under interactive student resources. Let's take a look for a moment here at lesson activities and worksheets, of which you will find a tremendous amount of resources here. You've got your videos, answer keys for videos, guided reading activities, biographies. This might not have been something that possibly would have been part of core instruction in a classroom environment, but might now be very appropriate in a distance learning kind of environment. And you could push out the biography and the questions one day, perhaps even give the answer key to the student several days later or as they complete this so they can check themselves. Economics of history, lots of different documents that, again, during the course of core instruction within the classroom may have taken a secondary place in instruction, but might rise to the top in the environment we find ourselves in. So those are some of the activities we wanted to look at here in the lesson level. Now, I had mentioned about double checking the student access to those. So let me show you how to do that once again. So I'm going to come over here into the left-hand side into my roster and click on that. And so this is a very quick and easy way for a teacher to check and see what did I make accessible to my students and what are they seeing. So if I go into a student here, let's say that I want to look at George Clooney as a student. There's George. I follow my cursor all the way over to the right-hand side, click on the 3 dots, and emulate the student. I'm not going to do that now, but I'll let you go ahead and do that on your own. So emulating the student then goes into the account of the student as if you were the student themselves. So you can see exactly what the student would see. You could even actually complete their work for them if you wanted to. Not that you want to do that. But that's perhaps the best way to simply double check the visuals that you are pushing out to the students and the assignments that you are sending out to them. Speaking of assignments, let's go over here to the left-hand bar and click on assignments quickly. And I will remind those of you who are using Google Classroom in this environment to interact with your students how that could be accomplished. So here's an assignment, a concentration game on radical revolution and reaction. I've created this assignment, actually I did it a time back ago, and now I want to take this assignment, but I've decided I don't want my students to do this here. I would prefer to do that in a Google Classroom environment. I follow my cursor all the way over to the right-hand side, and again to the 3 dots, and I click on Share with Google Classroom. At that point, you will open up your Google Classroom. I don't have one, so I'm not going to open that up. You will open up your Google Classroom, and you can decide what type of assignment or task you wish to make it within the Google environment. So we're just opening up a portal between the California Impact environment and the Google Classroom environment so that you can have your students complete the task more appropriately, perhaps, in the Google Classroom environment. The last thing I wanted to look at in terms of embedded resources here on the left-hand side are sync blasts. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you'll see that it opens up a new tab and takes us to the sync blast section. Keep in mind that unless you actually assign these to your students, they do not have access to sync blast. They cannot come here and peruse through this site and just take a look at some of these things on their own. If they log in, they see nothing unless you have, as a teacher, have assigned to them. I did want to talk about this briefly. There is a beautiful video of this that is independent of this video, so if you wish to learn more in depth about how to use sync blasts, really encourage you to take a look at that. But I wanted to throw this out there into the universe because and a lot of our students, especially our adolescents, are very peer-oriented and are really straining to be from being away from their peers. And this is some way that we can offer that interaction with peers, is they can be reading these articles and submitting their responses and having some interaction with their peers. So if that's something that appeals to you, I very much encourage you to take a look at that. So I'm going to close this out of here. And I'm going to finish up this video by talking about a different way to access these resources. So let me click on the dashboard and take us back there. The alternate way to take a look at most of these resources would be as a library access. So what we've just done is look at the resources as they are connected to the chapters themselves and then the lessons themselves. The alternative to that is just to go into them as if this were a library. And for that task, I'm going to come over here to where it says Search for Resources, and this is very straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and let that load. And you have your classic search bar where you can enter your search parameters and go ahead and take a look at the results, and you can see that there are currently approximately 5,600 items that are available in the library, which is way too many to look for, so you're going to have to start to filter. And here are some of your filters. I could filter by course location, standards, languages, but probably the most appropriate way that you want to filter your resources are by resource type. So I'm going to open up and expand that. And if for some reason it only gives me the first 5, so I'm going to open them all up. So as you can see here, I can take a look at all of my resources. There's all my PDFs. I could look at those. Here's all my videos, all my Word documents. So if I'm looking to look for documents that I could transfer over, say, to a Google Classroom, I might want to hit PDFs and PowerPoints and Word documents and perhaps web links. Just as a point of record, the videos are not transportable because of copyright, so those do have to stay on the California Impact site. So now that I've checked off those boxes, instead of having 6,000 results, I've now narrowed it down to 3,100. I could refine that further by saying all of those that support Chapter 1. And now it's down to 172. So in this way, I can filter all of the resources in that library format and see what my choices are across the top and appropriately come to a variety of resources that I could then look at and decide what to do with. So just to recap, I'm going to go back to the dashboard. How can I help myself to remind myself how to accomplish tasks within the website? Coming over here to your name, and the second item in is that help sign. The embedded resources, where can I best find my embedded resources? Go into Browse Your Course, click on a chapter, and you will see your chapter level resources listed first. Here's where they're all located under. I open up one of these blades, and there are a number of tiles that represent my resources. If I wish to drill down even further into an individual lesson, come over here to the pull-down menu, click on my lesson, and I see the blades once again. Open up the blades. I can assign those to students or download those, or however I wish to approach that task. So there's that. On the left-hand side, two items that I did again want to repoint out were the sync blasts. Again, there's a wonderful video available if you wish to learn how to utilize those in this environment, and the assignments themselves on how to create an assignment, and then once having created assignment, to push it over into Google Classroom by clicking on the three dots, sharing with Google Classroom. And then lastly, reminding you that all of this can also be accessed in a more library-style format by returning to the dashboard, clicking on Search for Resources, and then accessing all of the thousands of resources available to you by filtering them by keyword, filtering them by course location, what chapter they are appropriate to, or filtering them by resource type. So all of those things will give you a head start on how to utilize some of the digital resources within California Impact grades 6, 7, 8, and all of the high school titles in this environment of distance learning. I'm sure that McGraw-Hill will offer additional support as this emergency continues. So we look forward to working with you during this time and after all of this passes, again, working within the California Impact series. Thank you very much.